That morning, when Edith walked into her sister's room, the first thing she saw was the bed. It was neatly made. Lena's bed was never neat. She looked at the wardrobe. It was half open. Some things were missing. She looked at the dressing table. The perfume bottle was gone. The silver comb was gone. The small brooch their mother had left behind was gone. The window was open, and on the floor, right by the window, there was a small piece of paper. Edith bent down and picked it up. It was Lena's handwriting. Edith, Daniel and I are leaving. South. Don't look for me. I want to be happy. Forgive me. 5 sentences, not even a signature. Edith read the note once, then she folded it and put it in her pocket. She looked out the window. There was a lot inside her at that moment. There was anger, there was sadness, but there was no surprise. Because Lena had always been like this. She ran away. She chased beautiful things. She never looked back at what she left behind. She went downstairs to the sitting room. Her mother was crying. Her father's face was pale. The engagement had already been announced in London. The whole city had heard Duke Sebastian Crane of Aldmore was going to marry her sister, Lena Voss. Invitations had been written. Preparations had begun. But Lena was gone. Her mother looked at Edith. Her eyes were red, her face pale. She didn't say anything. She didn't need to, because fixing the problems Lena created had always been Edith's job. Edith remembered Sebastian Crane. It had been a few weeks earlier. The Duke had come to this house with his family, to see the 2 sisters, to choose one of them. Edith had known everything that day. She knew the Duke would choose Lena. Lena was striking, lively. Whenever she entered a room, everyone looked at her. Edith, on the other hand, was calm and quiet. She always stayed in the background, and that day had been no different. The Duke arrived, looked at the 2 sisters, and his eyes moved to Lena. He didn't hesitate for even a second. Edith had not been surprised, but she had been hurt, even if she never admitted it to herself. And now her mother was saying that Edith would go in Lena's place. But how was that even possible? "When do we leave?" Edith said. That afternoon, her father wrote a letter to London, to the Duke's family. He explained everything. Lena had fallen ill, an unexpected illness. But the Voss family would keep their word. The older daughter would come to London. The reply from the Duke's family did not take long. "We accept." 2 words, nothing more. When Edith heard the answer, she was in her room, packing her suitcase. She let the dress in her hands fall and stood there for a moment. The Duke knew. His family had told him. This was a kind of game played against London. The city had only heard the name Lena. No one knew her face. Edith would go, use Lena's name, and no one would notice. The Duke would play along too. He had to avoid scandal, but not willingly. Edith would leave for London tomorrow. She would enter Sebastian Crane's house, and she would walk through that door, not as Edith Voss, but as Lena Voss. Sebastian Crane did not want her. She knew that. The Duke had chosen Lena. Instead, he would find Edith thus standing before him, and the Duke would be unhappy. She knew that too. We'll take a very short break. If you don't want to miss new stories, please subscribe to the channel. London greeted her on a rainy morning. Edith looked out through the carriage window. People hurried under their umbrellas. The streets were loud, horses' hooves, vendors calling out, church bells ringing somewhere in the distance. After the wide, quiet silence of Scotland, London felt overwhelming. Her mother sat beside her. They had spoken very little during the journey. Everything that could be said had already been said. All that remained was to do it. The carriage slowed. Edith lifted her head. Aldmore House came into view. Servants were waiting at the entrance, and behind them, at the top of the steps, stood Sebastian Crane. She climbed the stairs. The Duke looked down. He looked at Edith. and his expression did not change at all, because he knew, and Edith knew that he knew. They went inside. The house looked even larger from within. The ceiling was high. The staircase split in two directions. Everything was dark wood and heavy fabric. Large portraits hung on the walls, the ancestors of the Crane family, generation after generation, of the same cold faces, the same proud posture. The head housekeeper stepped forward. She was elderly, with silver hair and a serious expression. "Your Grace," she said. "Welcome. Your room is ready." "Your Grace." Edith hesitated for a second. Then she smiled. "Thank you." As she climbed the stairs, she heard footsteps behind her. She didn't turn, but she could feel it. The Duke was still there, watching. Her room was on the second floor. It was large, with a high ceiling. Through the window she could see London. The fireplace was burning, but the room still felt cold. Edith stepped inside. The door closed. She was alone. She didn't look at her suitcase. She didn't sit on the bed. She walked straight to the mirror and looked at herself. Edith Voss, 27 years old. A face that was neither striking nor plain. Calm, quiet, someone who always stayed in the background. And now she was standing in the largest house in London, in the home of the most powerful Duke. Under the name Lena, lunch that day was shared by 3 people: the Duke, Edith, and her mother. The table was large, the conversation was short. Her mother tried to fill the silence, the weather, the journey, the last days in Scotland. The Duke answered politely, briefly, but he did not say a single word to Edith. Edith didn't speak to him either. The silence between them hung above the table. Anyone could see it, but no one spoke about it. After lunch, the Duke stood up. "I have business this afternoon," he said. He gave a small nod and left. Her mother looked at Edith. Edith looked at her glass. That evening, a neighboring family came to visit. Lady Ashton and her daughter. It was a matter of social etiquette. The new bride had to be introduced. Edith received them in the sitting room. The Duke stood beside her, because he had to. Lady Ashton laughed and shook her hand. "Miss Lena, at last. We've heard so much about you. The Duke is very fortunate." "Thank you," Edith said, smiling. She looked completely natural. Beside her, the Duke did not move, but Edith felt it. At the moment, Lady Ashton said fortunate, the Duke's jaw tightened slightly, very slightly, almost impossible to notice. But Edith noticed. That night the guests left, and her mother retired to her room. Edith remained alone in the sitting room. She sat by the fireplace and looked at the flames. All day long everyone had called her Miss Lena. Each time she answered, each time she smiled. She had repeated it so many times that for a moment she felt as if she might forget her own name. Edith. She said it in her mind, her own name. It was still there. She was still herself. She heard footsteps. She turned. The Duke was standing in the doorway. He didn't enter. He just stood there. "Are you comfortable?" he asked. His voice was neutral, not warm, not cold, simply a question asked out of duty. "Yes," Edith said. "Thank you." The Duke nodded and turned to leave. "Lord Crane." He stopped. Edith wasn't entirely sure what she wanted to say. But she wanted to say something real, something that had not been spoken all day. "This won't be easy," she said, "for either of us." The Duke turned and looked at her. Silence. "I know," he said at last. And then he left. Edith went up to her room and looked at herself in the mirror again. There was something inside her that she had been trying to push down all day. She didn't want it there, because it was dangerous, because it came at the wrong time, because it would only make everything harder. But she couldn't push it away. That day had been the first time she had seen Sebastian Crane up close. That cold face, that straight posture, that gaze that seemed to see everything. And deep inside her, somewhere very quiet, very deep, that small feeling stirred again, the same feeling she had felt that afternoon in Scotland. While the Duke had been looking at Lena, Edith had been watching the Duke, and in that moment something had happened, something small and quiet, something she had pushed away immediately. Now it was coming back. Stop, she told herself. Stop. This is wrong. This is impossible. This man does not want you. He doesn't even know you. He doesn't even truly know the name of the woman standing in front of him. But feelings do not listen. She turned off the lamp. Lying there in the dark, she closed her eyes. Tomorrow would be harder. The day after that, even harder. Because every day she would be living in the same house as that man. Every day she would see that gaze. And every day she would have to push this feeling down. Because Sebastian Crane did not want her. He had chosen Lena. The first week passed like this. The Duke came down early for breakfast. By the time Edith arrived, he had already retreated to his study. Sometimes they had lunch together. Sometimes they didn't. In the evenings they were in the same room only when they had to be. A dinner, a visit, a reception. The Duke was never rude. That had to be said. He did not raise his voice. He did not insult her. He never showed open hostility toward Edith. But he wasn't there. He could be in the same room and still feel absent. When Edith spoke, he looked elsewhere. When she asked him something, he gave short answers and closed the subject. During dinners, he looked at his plate, not at her. And every morning when Edith woke up, she carried that weight. She told no one. There was no one to tell, anyway. At the end of the second week, the first great ball took place. At the Pembertons' house, the largest mansion in Mayfair, one of the brightest nights of London society, Edith prepared herself. A dark blue dress, her hair arranged neatly, the small earrings her mother had left her. She looked in the mirror. Lena would not wear this dress, she thought. Lena would wear red, something bright, but Edith was Edith, even if she carried Lena's name. The Duke was waiting by the door. Black evening suit, straight posture, the same cold expression. He looked at Edith. He did not look her up and down, just one glance, brief. "Are you ready?" he asked. "Yes." They entered the carriage. Neither of them spoke during the ride. The ballroom was full. Lights shimmered. Music filled the air. Women in colorful dresses moved across the floor. When Edith and Sebastian entered, a few heads turned. The new bride, the wife of the Duke of Aldmore. Edith smiled. She greeted people. She shook hands. She spoke. The Duke stood beside her, but apart. Not physically, but in another way. He was in his own world, his own conversations. He did not look at Edith. Then the music changed. The dancing began. A gentleman, Lord Harley, in his 50s, warm-faced, out in front of Edith. "Miss Lena, would you care to dance?" Edith looked for the Duke instinctively, without realizing it. He was standing there, watching, but he did not move. Edith turned back. "With pleasure," she said to Lord Harley. During the dance, she did not look for the Duke, but she felt it. The sense of someone watching. At one turn, she saw him in the corner. He stood there with a glass in his hand, looking at her. When Edith noticed, he looked away. Dinner invitations were harder. Within 1 week, there were 3 dinners. At the tables, Edith always spoke. Guests asked questions and she answered. She spoke about Scotland, about books, sometimes even made a small joke. Guests laughed, impressed. "What an intelligent woman," someone said. The Duke remained silent. One evening, as they were leaving, Lady Whitmore took Edith's hand. "My dear," she said, "you are beautiful, inside and out." Then she looked at the Duke. "You are fortunate, Sebastian." The Duke smiled, that short, polite, obligatory smile. "Yes," he said. One word. Empty. Edith heard it. She heard everything. That Thursday night, her mother fell ill. It was nothing serious. A cold. A few days of rest. But that evening, Edith and Sebastian were alone at dinner, not at opposite ends of the long table. Without her mother there, the table felt smaller. They sat close to each other. Dinner passed in silence. This time Edith did not try to fill it. She let the silence remain. There were no guests, no one she needed to perform for. She simply ate. The Duke ate as well. Then the wine was brought. The servants withdrew. The Duke lifted his glass, but he did not drink immediately. He looked at Edith. "Why did you accept?" he asked. Edith was not surprised. In fact, she had been expecting this question. Sooner or later, it had to come. "For my family," she said. The Duke waited, as if expecting more. Edith said nothing else. "Anything else?" the Duke asked. The room fell quiet. Edith looked at her glass. The answer was there, clear and honest. When she allowed herself to be truthful with herself, she knew it very well. But she could not say it. If she said it, everything would change. If she said it, she would stand defenseless before that cold man. If she said it. "No other reason," she said. Her voice was calm and even. The Duke looked at her for a long time, with that calculating gaze that seemed to see everything. He did not believe her. Edith felt it. He did not believe her, but he did not insist. He set his glass down and stood. "Good night," he said, and he left. Edith remained alone at the table. The candle flickered. Rain could be heard outside. She looked at her wine but did not drink. Anything else? Yes, there was more, much more. That day in Scotland, when the Duke had arrived and stood before the two sisters, Edith had seen him, just for a moment. But that moment had been enough, and now she lived in the same house with him every day. Every day she saw that cold face, and every day that voice stirred again inside her. That small, dangerous voice that had to be silenced. "Stop," she told herself again. "Stop." She stood up and went to her room. That night the Duke sat in his study. Hours passed. Papers lay before him, but he was not reading them. No other reason. When she had said it, her eyes had not moved away. Her voice had not broken, but something had been there inside her. The Duke had seen it. He had felt it. She was lying. But why? Why was she lying? The Duke stood and walked to the window. The London night was cold, the streets quiet. He thought about the dinners, the guests' faces, the way they had seemed captivated when Edith spoke. He thought about the ball, the way Edith had looked dancing with Lord Harley, the way he had watched without meaning to, then looked away. And he thought about the question. Anything else? Why had he asked it? Why did the answer matter? He stepped away from the window and sat back down. He did not sleep that night. That week there was a tea hosted by Countess Bellamy. It was not a grand event, 15 or 20 women, afternoon tea in Belgravia. But in London society, these small gatherings could sometimes be more dangerous than the grand balls, because everyone was close to each other, and closeness was not always a good thing. Edith went alone. The Duke did not attend. Men did not come to such gatherings. The first half hour went well. Tea was poured, pastries were eaten. The conversation was light. Edith knew how to behave, to smile, to ask questions, to listen. She had always known how. Then Lady Grover arrived. Lady Grover was over 40, thin, with sharp eyes. She was the kind of woman people in London were wary of. She never insulted anyone directly, but she chose her words so carefully that the insult became unavoidable. She approached Edith with a smile. "Miss Lena," she said, "of course I had heard about you, but I didn't expect this." Edith smiled politely. "And what did you expect?" "Something more." Lady Grover paused as if searching for the right word. "More brilliant. I imagined the woman chosen by the Duke of Aldmore would be more striking." A small silence spread across the room. A few women had heard. No one said anything. Edith held her teacup. Her voice did not change. "Brilliance is exhausting," she said calmly, "not very practical in the long run." A few women laughed. Lady Grover's smile stiffened, but she did not leave. She took another step closer. "You are from Scotland, aren't you? Such a distant place. It must have been difficult to adjust to London." "I am adjusting," Edith said. "And is the Duke adjusting to you?" Lady Grover lowered her voice, but everyone could hear it. "Because I have known Sebastian Crane for many years, and in this marriage, he does not seem particularly happy." Silence. This time, a longer silence. Edith felt something inside her, right in the center of her chest, something warm and sharp. But her face did not change. She was about to answer. Just as she was about to speak, the door opened. Sebastian Crane walked in. Everyone was surprised. Men did not come to this kind of gathering. The Duke scanned the room. He found Edith. He saw Lady Grover. He saw the distance between them, the silence in the room, Lady Grover's sharp smile, and instinctively, without thinking, he moved. He walked over to Edith and stopped beside her. Then he looked at Lady Grover. "Lady Grover," he said. His voice was even, but there was something in it, that cold, sharp, unquestionable thing. "I hope you have had the chance to meet my wife." Lady Grover took a step back. "Yes, of course. Good." The Duke turned to Edith. "We need to leave. Something has come up." They went outside, and the carriage was waiting. They got in. The carriage started moving. Edith looked out the window. The Duke sat across from her. Silence. Then Edith turned in. "You didn't have to do that," she said. The Duke looked at her. "What? You didn't have to come in. I could have handled it." A short silence. "I could see that," the Duke said. "Even so." Edith turned back to the window. "I'm not going to thank you." The Duke said nothing, but something happened inside him. Edith did not see it, but it did. Lena would have thanked him. She would have thanked him a great deal, clasped her hands together, her eyes shining, and said, "Oh, how kind of you." But this woman had looked at him calmly and said, "You didn't have to." The Duke peered to the window. Why had he stepped in? He had not asked himself that. He had acted on instinct. The moment he saw Lady Grover's expression, that smile, something had happened inside him, and his feet had moved. Why? He gave himself no answer. He did not want to. When they returned home, the Duke went straight to his study. Edith went upstairs. As the night grew later, the house fell quiet. The servants had withdrawn. Her mother had already gone to her room, and everything was dark. Edith could not sleep. She waited an hour. Then she got up, wrapped a shawl around herself, and went downstairs. The library. She always went there when she couldn't sleep. Books helped, or at least they helped fill the night. She opened the library door and stopped. The Duke was inside. He was sitting by the fireplace. He had a book in his hand, but he was not reading. He was only staring at the fire. When he heard Edith, he lifted his head. Neither of them said anything. Then the Duke closed the book. "Couldn't sleep?" he asked. "No." Edith stepped inside. She moved to the other side, not directly across from him, to the chair beside it. "You too?" "Me too." The fire crackled. The wind moved outside. Edith looked at the shelves. She wanted to take a book, but she did not move. It was such a strange moment. Midnight, the two of them alone, and a silence more peaceful and natural than any they had shared before. Then the Duke spoke. "What were you going to say to Lady Grover tonight?" Edith thought for a moment. "I was going to say something. It doesn't matter what. It matters." Edith looked at him. "Why?" "Because I want to know." A short silence. "I already said that brilliance is exhausting," Edith said. "I was going to continue. Things that are exhausting in the long run are never real. They are only exhausting." The Duke looked at her. "Were you talking about brilliance?" he asked. "Yes." "What else?" Edith paused for a second. Then she said, People sometimes work very hard to seem a certain way, to seem like something they are not, that wears out both them and everyone around them. The Duke looked at her, thought about it. Is that what Lena thinks? He said slowly. Or is that what you think? The room went still. Edith froze. That question, that simple, direct, two-word question, touched something inside her. It was too direct, too real. 1 second passed, 2 seconds. Me, Edith said, just that one word. The Duke looked at her for a long time. Those eyes that were always calm, always calculating, were different now, more attentive, more searching. Edith did not look away. Then she stood up. "Good night," she said. Her voice came out calm. She walked to the door. She opened it. Edith. She froze. It was her name, her real name. For the first time in that house, someone had spoken her real name. She turned. The Duke had not stood up. He was still sitting there, in the firelight, his face half in shadow. "Good night," he said, only that. Edith looked at him for a second. Then she left. Her hands were shaking as she walked down the corridor. Edith. He had said it, deliberately, and in his voice, that cold, even, always controlled voice, there had been something, very little, almost nothing, but it had been there. She entered her room, closed the door, sat on the bed. Me. She had said it, not as Lena but as herself. For the first time in that house, with that man, she had spoken as herself, and he had heard her. The Duke sat in the library for a long time. The fire slowly died down. The cold settled in, but he did not rise. Me. He could not get that word out of his mind. She had said it so simply, without apology, without explanation, just said it. Me. And in that moment, only in that moment, the Duke realized something. He did not know this woman. He had thought he knew Lena Voss. He had spent a few days in Scotland, made his choice, and that was that. But now, there was a different woman in front of him, a very different one, and that difference. The Duke stood and walked to the window. The London night was cold. That difference unsettled him. But tonight, for the first time, that unease felt like something else. He did not want to name it, so he didn't, but he did not sleep that night. That week, the first snow fell. In London, snow was usually light, thin, dirty, quick to melt. But that morning, it was white. It covered the garden, covered the trees, softened everything into silence. Edith looked out the window. It reminded her of Scotland, the wide, empty hills. When she was a child, she and her mother used to go into the garden when the first snow came. Lena would run ahead, laughing, falling everywhere. Edith would walk behind her, quietly watching. It had always been like that. Lena in front, Edith behind. She took her shawl and went downstairs. She stepped into the garden. No one was there. The servants were inside. The Duke was in his study. Her mother was still asleep. Edith was alone, and in that loneliness, for the first time in a long while, she felt something fall away. The weight she carried every moment, the weight of being Lena. In the garden there was no one watching, no one calling her Miss Lena. There was only Edith. She walked across the snow, went in among the trees. Then she stopped and looked up at the sky, gray, but holding a kind of clarity. She closed her eyes. Then she heard footsteps. She opened her eyes and turned. Sebastian Crane was coming through the garden gate. He had no coat on, only his jacket, his hands in his pockets against the cold. When he saw Edith, he stopped. Both of them were surprised. Both of them tried not to show it. The Duke came closer. He stopped beside Edith and looked out over the garden. "Cold," he said. "I know. Why did you come out here?" Edith thought for a moment. She wanted to answer honestly. "To be myself," she said. The Duke looked at her, but this time he looked at her differently. Not with that calculating, measuring gaze. More carefully, more deeply. Edith felt it, but she said nothing. For a while, neither of them spoke. The snow was still falling. Light, soft, silent. Sometimes it slipped from the trees in small white clusters. Then the Duke spoke. "When we came to Scotland," he said, "two sisters stood before me." Edith froze, but she did not turn. Lena was in front. The Duke continued. His voice was steady, almost reflective, without judgment. "She spoke. She laughed. She filled the room. You were behind her. I looked at Lena." Edith took a breath. "I know," she said. "I did not think for even a second." The Duke paused. "I chose the bright one, the one who drew attention, the one everyone turned to look at when she entered a room." He lifted his head and looked at the sky. "That was a mistake." Edith turned. She looked at the Duke. His profile was dark against the snow, and though he still stood with that same straight posture, his shoulders seemed slightly lower in that moment. "Do you regret it?" Edith asked. The Duke turned and looked at her. "Choosing Lena?" "Yes." A second passed. "Yes," the Duke said. Edith went still. It was not that she had never expected that answer, but hearing it was different. Hearing it made everything more real. The Duke went on. "I looked at Lena, but I did not see you." His voice dropped. "You were there. You were always there. But I did not look." Edith closed her eyes. That afternoon in Scotland came back to her. Before the Duke arrived, Edith had prepared herself. She had fixed her hair, put on her best dress. As she came down the stairs, she had told herself, "Do not hope." But even so, there had been something small inside her, a small, quiet hope. Then the Duke had looked at Lena, and that small hope had quietly gone out. "Most people don't see," Edith said. Her voice was low. "I'm used to it. That does not make it right. It doesn't have to be right. It is still real." The Duke took a step forward. He moved closer to her. There was very little space between them now. "I see you now," he said. Edith opened her eyes. He was there, close, and that face, always cold, always distant, was different now. What he had been holding inside had come to the surface. He was no longer hiding it. Edith looked at him, and that feeling, the one she had buried for years, silenced, feared. This time she did not push it down, because she had no strength left to bury it. "Sebastian," she said. He stopped. It was the first time she had said his name. In that house, in that garden, in the falling snow, she had said it for the first time. The Duke said nothing, but his eyes, those eyes that were always steady, filled. Not with tears, but they filled. Edith turned and looked out at the garden. "Lena was always in front," she said. "I was always behind. Didn't I say I was used to it?" She paused. "But getting used to something is not the same as accepting it. It only means carrying it in silence." "What did you carry?" Edith waited for a while. Then she said, "Everything. My family's burdens. Everything Lena did. And before I came here." She stopped, then continued. "Before I came here, there was something else I carried too." The Duke waited. Edith did not turn. She kept looking at the garden. "When I saw you in Scotland," she said, "I felt something. It was small. I buried it right away because Lena was there, and there was no point in hoping." She paused. "But I never buried it completely, and when I came here, I carried that feeling every day. Every day I silenced it, because you had chosen Lena, and I was not Lena." Silence. The snow kept falling. The Duke did not speak, but Edith felt it behind her, felt him move closer. One step. He was standing beside her now. "Edith." She turned. He was there, close, and his eyes, this time hiding nothing at all, were on her. "I see you," Sebastian Crane said. "I see you now." Edith felt something inside her begin to come undone. That weight she had carried for years. That quiet thing she had never told anyone. The thing she had carried alone through so many nights. It was loosening. She could not say all of it. She did not need to. There, in that garden, in the falling snow, they both knew now. Edith looked at him for a long time. "You are late," she said at last. Something appeared on Sebastian Crane's face. That rare, very rare thing. It was not quite a smile, but it was close. "I know," he said. They did not go back inside right away. They stayed in the garden. The snow kept falling. Neither of them spoke. But this time the silence was full in a different way. It was not the heavy, empty silence of those first days. This was warm. This belonged to both of them. Then the Duke held out his hand. Edith looked at it and took it. The next morning, a letter arrived. Edith was at the breakfast table. A servant brought the envelope, small, white, and written in a familiar hand. Lena's handwriting. Edith took the envelope, held it in her hands. She did not open it right away. She only looked at it. Those slanted, careless letters, written without much thought. Then she opened it. The letter was short. Lena always wrote short letters. "Edith, we are in the south. The weather is beautiful, and I can see the sea from the window. Daniel is well. I am well. I hope you are too." That was all. No apology, no explanation, no real question about how anyone was. Not one word asking about the family or about Edith. Only "I am well." Edith lowered the letter and looked at the table. What did she feel? She thought about it, tried to be honest. There was anger, yes. It was still there. Maybe it always would be. Lena had run away. She had left Edith, the family, everything. And now she was writing about the sea outside her window. But there was something else too. Relief. Lena was well. She was happy. And strange as it felt, that eased something inside Edith. Because this was Lena. She had always been this way. And when Lena was happy, at least she did not come back. She heard footsteps. Sebastian had come down for breakfast. He sat at the table, poured his tea, and saw the envelope in Edith's hand. He stopped. "Lena?" "Yes." He held out his hand. Edith gave him the letter. The Duke read it quickly, once. Then he folded it and gave it back. Silence. Outside, horses could be heard in the street. The city was waking. The Duke poured his tea and looked at Edith. "Would you like to go?" he asked. Edith was surprised. "Where?" "To Lena." He paused. "Or somewhere else, back to Scotland. Anywhere you want." He looked down at the table. "If you want to be free, everything will be arranged. A carriage, money, whatever need." Edith looked at him. She had not expected that offer. Yesterday in the garden, that hand, that look, that "I see you," and now this. "Why?" she asked. The Duke lifted his head. "Because you were forced into this marriage," he said. "You accepted it for your family, and he paused. "I was unfair to you in the beginning. I know that." Edith looked down at the table, at Lena's letter. "I am well." 5 words, 5 empty words. Then she thought of yesterday, the garden, the snow, that hand. There was something inside her now, clear, quiet, and certain. "What if I want to stay?" she asked. The Duke looked at her. There was a long silence. Outside, the world was noisy, but the room was quiet. There was only the two of them. Only that moment. "This time, I am choosing," Sebastian Crane said. His voice was low, but what was in it was not. "You, not Lena. You." Edith looked at him. She looked at that face, always cold, always distant, always controlled, But now there was something in it, something open, something no longer hidden, and Edith understood. This man had made the wrong choice in Scotland. He had chosen what was bright. He had been misled by what he saw on the surface. But now he was choosing from something deeper. Edith stood. She walked around the table and stopped in front of him. Very little space remained between them. The Duke stood too. Edith looked at him, up at him. He was tall, standing straight as always, but his eyes were waiting. For the first time, he was waiting, not demanding, not pressing, just waiting. "My name is Edith," she said. For the first time in London, in that house, to that man, she spoke her real name. All through that house, she had been called Miss Lena. At every visit, every ball, every dinner, Edith had answered every time. But that morning at that table, to that man, Edith, as herself. Something changed in Sebastian Crane's face. It was a smile, not a full one, only half, brief, almost too slight to notice. But it was real, the realest thing Edith had seen since she arrived in that house. "I know," he said. That afternoon, Edith went out into the garden. The snow had begun to melt. Water dripped from the trees. The paths were wet, and the garden was losing that pure white stillness and slowly becoming itself again. Edith walked to the place where she had stood the day before, among the trees. She took the letter from her pocket. Lena's letter. "I am well." She looked at it for a long time. Then she folded it and put it back into her pocket. Lena was well, somewhere of her own choosing, with the man she wanted, living with the sea outside her window. Maybe she was happy. Maybe she was not. But she was gone. She had chosen her own path, and Edith had chosen too, her own path, by her own choice, not because anyone forced her, not because of family pressure, because of that clear, quiet voice inside her that knew exactly what it wanted. At dinner that evening, the Duke turned to Edith first. "There is a concert in London," he said. "Friday evening. Would you like to go?" Edith looked at him. It was not a ball, not a social duty, it was just a question. "Would you like to?" "Yes," Edith said. The Duke inclined his head, and that half-smile, that brief, real, rare smile, appeared on his face for a moment. That night, Edith stood in her room and looked at herself in the mirror. Edith Voss, 27 years old, the one who had always stayed in the background, the one who had always carried everything, the one who had always been silent. But now something was different. It was the same room, the same face, but what was inside her had changed. That weight, the weight she had carried every morning when she woke, every night when she lay down, was lighter now. She turned off the lamp. In the dark she smiled, a small, quiet smile that belonged only to her. Some people look only at the surface, some people truly see. Sebastian Crane saw too late, but he saw, and Edith Voss, the woman who had always stayed in the background, the woman who had always carried everything in silence, stood in front that morning in the garden, in the snow, for the first time, by her own choice. Thank you for listening to the story, all the way to the end. Please tell us which city you're watching from and what the story made you feel. Don't forget to subscribe so you won't miss new stories.